Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another what I know will be delightful conversation with Tom Hill. If you remember, last time we went for a ride down Broadway Revere and reminisced about all of the things that were there, about World War II, and for a variety of people who made tremendous sacrifices for us. And today, we're going to remember Revere Beach, because Revere Beach is the iconic place in Revere. And we celebrated the 100th anniversary of Revere Beach in 1995 or 6. When was Revere Beach declared a reservation?
In 1896 or 1897, the state took it over, and they made it a reservation for the good of the people of the state so that they couldn't be denied bathing by the town of Revere, which was at that time. Revere didn't become a city until 1915. When they started off, when the state took it, they took it for the Boston Elevator, part of which is on Winthrop Avenue, Revere Beach Parkway, where the entrance to Suffolk Downs comes in. It's now occupied by the Revere Police Department.
Right.
And that was part of Sales Creek, which came in from the Winthrop side, and it was like an octopus. Part of it went under the racing strip at Suffolk Downs. Part of it went under Winthrop Avenue, the Parkway, behind Seratani's, back into Winthrop Avenue again, the entrance to Suffolk Downs, and that the MDC later on came in as part of Metropolitan Affairs, and they stored their curbstone in there and things they used on the beach. They also used it as a dumping ground, and it was nothing but a culvert. And it was 123,000 square feet of land, and it ran up by the trailer park, up by Lee Burbank Highway.
And then, of course, it runs down into the Belle Isle Marsh.
We have Belle Isle Creek there.
Right. Well, at that time, were there any amusements on the beach, or was it just houses?
I really don't know. I would imagine some, because on Ocean Avenue at the time was 2 bathhouses. One was run by Ma Burke, and one was by my Aunt Mary Clancy. And they let you change your bathing suit. There were 2 houses, and they let you change their bathing suit in the basement of the home, and they gave you a towel for 5 cents. And they were directly behind where the present police station is today, and that's where they were. Now, Ma Burke had a son, George Burke, who went to the University of Massachusetts, and he's one of 2 all-time greats at the University of Massachusetts. The other is Dr. J.
Wow.
He was an outstanding basketball player. He later on became the district attorney of Norfolk County, and Della Hunt was his first assistant, who also became the district attorney and United States congressman.
So they were private houses there.
Private houses.
Was there a pier?
No,
in that town?
no, they were all summer cottages in there, and that the cottages didn't come down until the arcade came into effect, and I think it was the #1 federal housing in the country at the time. And they took it really for parking for the arcade, really.
People are under the impression that Revere Beach wasn't kind of a center for recreation until after Wonderland, but...
Oh no, before that you had the Coral Gables, which was a dance hall. Later became Condens, and then later became the Ocean View.
The Ocean View, that's right.
And then you had the Moorish Castle, which was on the corner of Shirley Avenue and the beach. And that had a theater, and it had a bowling alley, and it had Lewis's American Cafe. And on the opposite corner you had Barney Chef's that you could get a hot dog, and a root beer. Upstairs was the Pleasanton Hotel that they had rooms, and that they had a great turnover that came to Revere from Worcester, and they had they said that my information came from Captain George Ford, a fireman, worked on the beach and that, and he said that what was the
Well, let me just ask you about the Pleasanton there, because there was a ballroom of some sort upstairs, because
there was rooms upstairs.
The class of 1961 had their prom, there's a picture in the yearbook, had their prom at the Pleasanton.
That might have been Murphy's by the Sea at the Breakers.
Might have been.
Breakers moving back. But there was 5 nightclubs on the beach or close to the beach at one time. Now, if you take Frankie Mac's, which is Beachmont,
right.
If you take the Surf, which is Ocean Avenue, and if you take Murphy's by the Sea, which was in the Ash Building on the boulevard, going up corner of West Street and the boulevard.
Okay, that's where Billy Garrigan was.
Yeah, and then you had the Lewis room. Then you had the Frolic.
Right.
And that,
wow. So the Frolic had great entertainers.
Great, wonderful, top-notch entertainment.
Yeah, right.
They had Barbara Streisand there.
Yeah.
And that.
And I remember, although sometimes we kids would get in because there'd be somebody big in there, and you could see them, and we knew all the waitresses who were there.
Yeah.
They were, we babysit for the waitresses. So, but I can remember Belle Bath being there, and she was supposedly very off-color, which would be nothing today. And
Toady Fields, too.
And Toady Fields,
Toady made them out.
yes.
She got married in Revere.
Really?
Joe McChrystal married her.
No kidding.
Yeah,
At
Toady
the City
Fields.
Hall.
Top-notch female
I remember her
entertainment.
late night TV. Top-notch. And Superintendent of Schools, Louis Perullo.
Played in the orchestra
for
there.
A long, great musician.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, really terrific.
He also had something to do with the Nashua Philharmonic there. He was the #1 violinist, I believe, in addition to playing the saxophone.
Yeah, wow. So great guy.
Well, you had Blue Ridge Castle there, you had Red Miller's Bowling Alley, you had the Nautical Gardens, you had the Marathon Dance there.
Where was the Marathon Dance?
Right where the Lewis Room is, right between Shirley Avenue and Beach Street. And they would hang on each other, they'd be exhausted dancing, and about 15 minutes out of every hour there would be a rest period. Red Skelton, the big comedian, he played there on the Marathon Dance. And Mayor Carey was a milkman, and he came in, ran the concession stand there, and that's where he had 3 places on the beach himself and a couple of beanos.
Oh, my goodness. So, how long did the Marathon Dances last?
I would say just a year or two.
Not very long.
Wasn't very long. And at that time, coming down.
It was Depression time, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was Depression time, and I don't know, they had prizes and things of that type, and they had floor walkers that would eliminate you if you weren't dancing. One of the dancers had to be moving their feet. The other could be resting or exhausted.
Goodness, yeah.
They had a pole sitter also there, the end of the 30s into the 40s, where they sat on a pole right around Bill Ash's where he is, and it was a woman that was about 30 feet up, and she sat up there and right around the clock, didn't come down, and that the meals and everything else were hoisted up to her and down to her. And her husband was an artist. He painted all the painting of the walls in at the Frolic there with dances and things of that type.
How long would she last up there?
I think that she lasted about 5 weeks, but I'm not sure.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, yeah, sometime. But she would drop the drapes at 11 o'clock at night or something and take them up again in the morning, and people would get on. It was an attraction. They also had a cannon on the beach they'd bring in around the 4th of July, around that, and they'd fire the man out of the cannon into a net. They also had a submarine on the on the beach that came in opposite Chester Avenue, just where the pavilion is, where the police station is.
Uh-huh.
And Doc Keevy owned it.
Who owned it? Who owned it?
Doc Keevy.
Oh.
He was a prominent. He
and
ran
you
for
said
mayor.
you went out. Then you.
My father took me and two of my brothers, and we went down aboard the thing, and the people that
and
he
it was
aborted
a real submarine.
Yeah, a real submarine. Yeah.
From World War I.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. And then the woman who used to jump in the water.
Yeah, the
ride a
flying
horse into
horses.
it? Yeah.
They had the flying horses. They had that in Atlantic City too. That
Really?
they had. Yeah.
I can't imagine how that could ever have been accomplished.
Well, that I seen it in both places.
Yeah,
To be honest with you.
So you know that it did.
Well, I seen it in Atlantic City, but they were like well, it was like a wall. She used to in Atlantic City. They used to jump from a concession stand behind it with the ramp that went out on a springboard, and she would get on the horse and jump in the water.
Oh.
And that come back.
Amazing. Yeah.
One time that they brought horses down there from Suffolk Downs that swam in the ocean till the people stopped them because it was unhealthy for the bathers and things of that type. It lasted a week, 2 weeks.
And that was just an attraction?
Well, it was good for the horses, but not for the people.
Oh, right.
So,
no.
But you had Simpson's Pier, which they repaired the boats. They took care of the lobstermen, and that to the left of it, north of it, was the Holt's Pier, where they had a seaplane with a couple of boats that took people around the harbor and on the beach. And
you could rent rowboats there.
Yeah, you could do.
And go out for a while. You walk out on the breakers.
But as you came along the beach, you had Coors, you had Rotherham's, you had Fellman's, Pepper Steaks, you had Barney Chef's, you had the
Joe and Nemo's hot dogs.
Joe and Nemo's, yeah. And that, well, let's see.
I worked at Rotherham's, which was, on the corner. I made cotton candy.
Chester Avenue.
And that was right on the corner there, next to the flying horses.
Right.
And I remember when they were tearing it down, a friend of mine and I went in and got some of the bulbs and some tickets, and I gave them to Peter McCauley.
Did you?
So I thought to be part of it, because you want the collection, to
Peter
stay in one
job,
place.
yeah.
He did a great job on Revere Beach. We owe him a real debt of thanks for all that he did. I'm thinking about the two piers before you leave that. So Holt's Pier was built first, and then Simpson's Pier afterwards.
Well, that might be. I really don't know which came first.
Then
but they were both separate.
Oh yes.
And the one was at Rogan's Point, and the other was opposite, directly to the right of the ocean view.
Yes, right. And but so you came from Rogan's Point to get onto Simpson's Pier. You could do that. That was there well into, I remember, even after Baker Simpson died, Doris Simpson and her sons were still running that for a while.
She eventually sold it.
And eventually sold out, right.
On the development,
Of course, that was a great place.
You had the Boulevard Theater, too, that was in there under Bluebird's Castle.
Yes.
In that block there that...
That's right. Lots of people from Beachmont went to the movies there as opposed to walking over to Broadway because it would be closer. And it was amazing. They could have an afternoon show and a night show and 5 or 6, newsreels and cartoons and updates. They had the same 2 movies.
The same movies as the Revere Theater. They swapped them back.
Right.
But a lot of people forget the Ash family that helped develop the beach, the Shayab family. You had Madame Cavanna, you had the De Marias, you had the Sullivans, the Broadbines, you had the Ernie Eggleston was a citizen of the ward there. he lived mostly permanently on Ocean Avenue. You had Marburg, my Aunt Mary Clancy. Mary Clancy's brother, Timmy Donovan, and Peter Donovan had the stop and go signs, the patent on it in the state of Massachusetts, and they called him Stop and Go Donovan on account of the traffic lights.
Was there a lot of mafia involvement on the beach?
Not until later on, when they bought Di Maria's, O Maria's on the boulevard. That's when I don't want to mention names.
Yeah, of course not. But in the beginning, then, it was really just families, individual families.
That was an Italian restaurant, the O Maria family. And that
so it was just families owning small places and going through it from there. I can remember in Ocean View that there was a Greek woman whose last name I'm not even sure I ever knew, even though I went to work for her. Her name was Mary. And she did not live in Revere, but she ran that restaurant, and she ran it quite well. Hired all kids, that Revere. She could trust from Revere, and she got a lot of us through. I paid my tuition in my first year of college through there and through the work in there. Yeah. And so it was always a great place for kids to walk. It was a great place. It was always very safe.
It was Times Square on the 4th of July.
Oh, absolutely.
Wall to wall
fireworks,
with people. Yes,
right. And fireworks almost every Friday night, as I recall.
The concessionaires paid for it.
Yeah, right. And they would come. And so when, we just had a very successful Sandcastle Festival, and with enormous numbers of people.
They're trying to bring it back to what it was.
All of the postcards that you see and the pictures that you see right up through the 1950s maybe, there are walls of people on the beach, on the sand, and walking up and down, all the way from the turn of the century, the previous century, with long, long dresses, to later on when people were in kind of skimpy bathing suits.
What changed, I think, was backyard pools, and that took away the beach. People used to be... They would go to the beach, and on a Sunday, you'd get from 100,000 to 350,000 people that would go to the beach.
Yeah.
And we had good transportation. We had two train services to Revere, the narrow gauge and the Lynn Railroad. You had the service bus come. You had the let's see.
And I remember streetcars.
We had streetcars that would come down Broadway, go on Central Avenue into Beach Street, continue on Ocean Avenue, and go to the beach. And then you would have it come down Broadway, go down to Revere Street, and go in, and it would come in two different sections of the city at the time. In addition to that, you had the transit bus service with the service bus line, and the the bus service that came from Lynn, and that you had the Boston elevator.
Yeah, I can remember you used to be able to take the service bus line to Lynn,
service
and so people
bus
from
line
Lynn
ran to Everett, Malden, and the transit bus line ran from Winthrop to Saugus to let's see, Winthrop, Saugus, and Revere, and then the service bus line ran Malden Street, Broadway, the Fenno Street, and that Broadway. The owners of the bus service, the Roberto family and the Anzonis, they were their own mechanics, their own bus drivers, and everything else. Family affair.
It still is.
Yeah,
the Anzonis
right.
still is. Yeah.
And they were 6 brothers, I think, and they owned 6 lines.
Oh.
The line in Brockton Street they owned, and that they bought a lot of lines and all that.
Yeah.
Each brother took a line, and that.
Well, I'm trying to visualize moving along toward the Pines. What was the Pines like? You know, before all those houses were built, when were they built down there? And
Well,
what was it like before?
in 1939, they built the Riverside. And they
Oh,
built them in a short period of time, and that, well, they didn't think they were well constructed, but they were.
right.
Alden Mills was the builder, and he had some relationship with the Baumeister family. And the Baumeister family was, I think, a dealership, automobiles out of Winthrop.
Oh,
And I think the Quigley family is, Larry Quigley is married, or Andy Quigley is married to one of the daughters.
uh-huh.
But the office was at the corner opposite the General Edwards Inn, where Pines Road is,
Yes.
and that it was that way while they built it. They built the Point of Pines fire station under the WPA.
Oh,
We had 4 fire stations roughly on the beach: Winthrop Avenue, Walden Street, Freeman Street, Point of Pines. Headquarters, Broadway. There were mostly farms here when they developed the town.
uh-huh.
The town was in 1871, and the city was 1951.
Uh-huh.
And all your development then started. The farms were, like Park Avenue was a farm right to the Woodlawn Cemetery.
Right.
And that,
I've seen pictures of that.
yeah, and that,
Well, how long did Wonderland last?
2 years, 1906 to 1908.
Wow.
And it was a big amusement park, but they just didn't get the draw that they figured they would get.
Yeah.
And that they was a first-class outfit. And they say that Disneyland in Florida, or Disney World, that the front entrance of that was the entrance to Wonderland in
yeah.
that day. Across the street was a bike track.
Oh, that's
And
where the
that,
Heaven's Gate, Hell's
They had a
Gate.
bike, they had a skating rink.
Yeah.
They had a bike track, 3 bike tracks. One was on Washburn Avenue, I believe, where Suffolk Downs is.
Yeah, in Beachmont.
One there, and the other one, I think, was on the beach.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
It's interesting that that was so popular then, and you simply never hear of that now, although you do in Europe, but not here.
yeah.
There are some pictures that they have up in some of the establishments in Beachmont of the bike track and people on the bikes on that track.
Yeah, well,
too.
that was active up until
very, yeah.
I went to them
You did,
to see
huh?
them. Yeah, I went to them.
And you mentioned Frankie Max in Beachmont while
Frankie,
you're there. Yeah,
yeah.
What was Frankie Max's real
His
name?
name was McDougal. Yeah, McDougal,
Yeah,
Frank
and,
McDougal.
Yeah.
Frank Petro, you remember him?
No, I don't
He
think
was
so.
a big wheel, and he ran for office, never got elected. It was a very
Really?
popular guy, little short guy, worked for the community news, delivered papers and all that with the McLaughlins.
Huh.
And that, and Tommy Dawson, I think, was the first one ever elected in the primary, 51% of the vote in the primary of the total vote of the ward. I think he's the only one that ever came through there. Tommy Dawson.
Huh.
He
He
had
taught English with me at Revere High School.
yeah, he was a good fellow too.
Good fellow, right?
Nice
Yeah,
fellow.
and a great golfer.
Yeah, he was. Like cigars.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did. Right. Yeah, they were a good family there.
Ed Andrews Orchestra, Frank Petty's trio, and Cliff Natley's. Ed Andrews was at the Ocean View. Years and years, came from Medford.
Huh?
We had him for our prom in 1940.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Revere City Hall was where we
Yeah.
had the prom.
Huh. Yes, I know that people did have things there. Of course, I remember the children's ball at the Revere City Hall.
Well, it used to be the auditorium.
At the auditorium there, right? Yeah. And graduation used to be at the movie theater on Broadway.
Yeah, the high school. Yeah,
That was for a lot of years. It was there mostly
Mm-hmm.
through the 50s, and but the beach. I'm trying to visualize because I was at Rotherham's on the corner. Mary Ahern's was down behind.
on
and
Ocean
one-
Avenue.
and then There were
Across the
three-decker
street.
houses down
They
there.
were all cottages across the street. A couple of Sullivan's had a place. Madame Cabana had an Italian restaurant, I believe. And there was the surf started there on the corner of Chester Avenue across the street from Mary Hearn's. And that then they moved further down to Elliott Circle on Ocean Avenue. And
Well, if you're moving down and you went down to the Pines, there was a big hotel at the Pines, wasn't there, at some point?
that was at Pines Road.
Oh, okay.
And that they tore down. That went from Pines Road to Lancaster Avenue.
Oh, that must have been huge.
And they had a dining room that seated 1,000.
Wow.
And that was used. They say years ago, before my time, they used to have a train wreck right about in that area where the General Edwards was. Trains coming from Lynn, coming from East Boston would meet there and crash. And it was a Labor Day event that they had at that time.
You mean they'd plan?
Yeah, it was a planned train wreck.
Just like burning down houses at Wonderland.
It could be.
I guess people like to watch that.
1949, the 4th of July, we had the beach fire. It started in a garage. It started in a barrel, and then it spread to an 8-car garage just in from Oak Island Street, where Kelly's Roast Beef is.
Yeah.
Spread to the cottages, went all the way up, and it started about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and at about midnight before we could bring it under control. But it wiped out the whole section. One of the fire engines went through the bridge. There was an arch coming from North Shore Road to the boulevard that the train used to go under, that would get down to the General Edwards, then cross over, meet the one coming down by Wonderland Park, and they would then go over to the left of the General Edwards Bridge into Lynn. Oh. And that, anyway, the fire apparatus, the front wheel or the back wheel went through the bridge, and they had to tear it down afterwards. Fire department also lost engine 1 that won a fire there, was right in front, and convection. That the way that the fire department operates on a fire on the beach, it's 2 engine companies on the beach, 2 from Ocean Avenue, which would, so when you vented both sides, when you had the smoke build up, the cold air or the air coming in ignited that into a combustion fire.
Oh, wow.
I worked that fire.
Yeah.
I worked at...
Was anybody killed in it?
No.
Oh, that's good.
We lost later on, 6 months later, or 10 years later, actually. Melvin Casey died at the Ocean View fire.
Yes.
He almost got out the door. They found his body just inside the Ocean Avenue door.
Yeah.
It started like on a 10-cent fire. Smoke was building up from, the building was closed from about 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 10 at night. And then when they had an alarm that there was smoke in the building, they went down and they entered from the boulevard side, and they had the smoke there, and they sent Melvin back to get an axe. Now you go back, the fire department goes out the way you came in, you follow your hose. Oh. And he went out the Ocean Avenue side, that's where they came in with engine 1. And then when they vented that part of the building, it burst in a fire. And they found his body 2 days later, almost out the door. Christmas week.
Yes, I remember watching.
He was
that
my
fire.
Relief that night.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I went home at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
He came on at 6 o'clock, and that I would have stayed to work for him, but he asked somebody else, and that he went and bought his kids an organ for Christmas. And he went down to the arcade, got it, and he was playing ping pong, and he had a great night, and a couple of hours later he was dead.
Wow. Yeah, it certainly is a very dangerous job.
And let's see. Yeah, we talked about, let's see, the Abrams family, the O'Brien family, the Shea family,
Yeah,
the Hurley family, Nate Siegel up the street,
yeah. All those people all
yeah,
had a lot.
Butler family,
Yeah, they did a whole
uh,
lot that they had there.
and then you had the McGlinchey family, the automobile dealership, Luna Park Garage, Bell
Oh yeah, I
Oldsmobile.
remember Luna Park and
Yeah.
Bill. Where was a there was a wrestling emporium there and
That was the skating rink
the
on Ocean
skating
Avenue.
rink.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was 2 skating rinks there,
Yeah.
and that one became it became a dance hall afterwards.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
Della Porta ran
That's
it,
right. Hmm.
and
Yeah.
Hilbert Della
Yeah,
Porta.
I remember that because I
Yeah.
would see people when I was working. Right. Well, it was a great place to spend your childhood and even a little bit
Yeah.
later. It was wonderful.
You got Abe Shore that was in there. He was blind.
Really?
Yeah, he had the Nautical Gardens with Charlie Freeman, Louis Fox. He had Billy O'Brien in there with the skee ball.
Yeah, and
that,
upstairs.
Kobe ice cream.
Yeah, upstairs
Saul
was the bowling
Feldman
alley.
and his brother.
Yeah.
And the Carey family, the McCarty family, the Della Russo and Chella family,
Yeah.
the Burke family, Maria family, Van Dyke family, John DePisa,
Yeah.
the Dillon family, the Clancy family, the Narrow Gauge Railroad, Eastern Mass Service with the transit bus line. You had West Street, Washburn Avenue, Bart Street, Beaver Street, Chester Avenue.
Yeah, right.
Johnny Most lived in the General Edwards
That's
with
right.
Morris McDermott, pitcher for the Red Sox. Johnny Most was the voice of the Celtics.
Do you know he took a girl to her prom?
Johnny,
A girl from Revere High School he took to her prom.
who, Maury McDermott or
No,
Johnny Most?
Johnny Most.
That right?
He did. I remember that, and it was at Beachview.
That right?
I was teaching. I think it was my first year, and he was there, and he was a great guy. He
he
entertained
was.
everyone. Great guy.
And then they had Garrett Byrne Jr. lived in there.
Really?
District Attorney's son.
Yeah.
He had
So
Easy Ed McCauley lived down there, Lou Seropoulos, Ed Rollins, Bob Brennan. You had Jerry Cheevers lived on the boulevard, Pie McKenzie.
Huh.
You had Bill Mulcray from Beachmont.
Yeah.
You had Bill
Celtics.
Russell, Bob Donham, Ed Harris. You had Art Ditmore lived in Revere. You had, let's see, Lefty Artivine, he was a pitcher. Willie McDermott, a jockey, lived on Charles Avenue.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
There were lots of jockeys who stayed in.
Yeah, they did.
Who they just rented rooms, and as a matter of fact, that Carillon at the top of the Priest House in Beachmont was put there in his memory. I
Very,
think it
yeah.
hasn't worked for years, but and it certainly doesn't work now. But it was there, and every Sunday when you'd go to church, that would be ringing.
Yeah.
And periodically they'd ring it too at different times. So, in memory of him.
You had Mike Sachs that lived in Reservoir Avenue. He had Sandy Chapman, an entertainer. He lived in Morgan's Point. You had Freddie Cannon, lived on Broadway, Revere. He was the
Yeah.
English Frank Sinatra.
Palisades Park.
Yeah.
That's Freddie Cannon.
Yeah, and you had the Ruth Roman's sister lived in corner of Shirley Avenue, North Shore Road. Quinchenti family lived in Fernwood Avenue. You
Lots of really
you
important.
had the great Tumble Inn, everybody diner.
That diner, that was
Monahan Diner in Beachmont.
Yeah, mhm.
You had the
diners were very popular.
you had
then.
Terry Barry on Broadway and Vinyl Street. You had there was what the other one? I'm trying to think of.
Well, we certainly know that there were a lot of really important people who have lived in Revere and have come in Revere, including yourself and your family. And you know, this is a great place to grow up. It's a great place to bring up your children, your
All
family.
my children are here.
Yeah, it's a wonderful
yeah.
place, and as I said to you earlier, it's certainly been a wonderful life for us. I mean, and it's great to be able to share memories with other people, too.
Everybody knew everybody,
yes.
too.
Yes, that was it.
That was a great...
and in fact, even though we have changed somewhat, I notice what's developing in you know, through the schools now, that the kind of that same feeling is building up, and that's one of the great places, best things about Revere. There's a real sense of community and obligation to each other.
How many people know that Lee Burbank Highway is named for Father Lee and Reverend Burbank?
I knew it was Father Lee because Court James Lee and the Junior Catholic Daughters.
Father Lee lived with Reverend Burbank while they built the rectory.
Aha.
And
so
they were great friends. And when Reverend Burbank died, the tolls of the Catholic Church tolled from. And that.
Well, and what church was he from?
He was
Burbank.
the Baptist Church.
The Baptist Church.
Originally, I think the Unitarian Church. People don't remember. They talk about Cheever Street. Yeah. Cheever Street was Dr. Thomas Cheever, a farmer who was a Baptist minister.
Yes.
Then you had Reverend Burbank in there. Then you had Arthur Swift in there. And that you had 4 or 5 real prominent ministers in there.
So, and then it has always been with that sense of community about people, because
yes, it was.
You talk about different churches, and certainly I know I see around in the churches that people really get along very well with each other. The food bank at the, you know, at the Congregational Church services people from Immaculate, certainly services people from the school, and it's been a great place to live.
I was the president of the American Legion Convention Corporation in 1955. And we brought the national chaplain from Iowa to Revere to say the Mass and to attend the convention with us. And then we gave the priest at Immaculate, he stayed at Immaculate, $450 to take all the clergymen in the city out to dinner, which they did. And they all got together with Father Hoffman, that was his name, and they went to dinner. And that was in 1955.
Wow.
And he had a wooden leg. Father Hoffman, he stepped on a landmine and blew the leg off.
Wow.
And
wow. Well, this is the end of today's conversation.
Well,
we look forward to another one at another time. I know that now that you've been on, Tom, that Morris is looking for you, and a couple of other people here looking for you to share some of these great memories.
Well, I hope I can inform them.
It's been my been my privilege, really, to talk to you and to reminisce.
You know,
with
you're great. You want the history of Revere. I would like to see the schools do that. Have the kids that are part of their history class or something about the most prominent clergymen in Revere, most prominent politicians in Revere, those most prominent settlers in Revere, and give them a prize, $25, $50, or whatever it is. I would also like to see a program where you teach a kid how to dance. Every kid goes to a prom, he can't dance. And if you had it on a Saturday morning with volunteers or something, kids 10 to 12th grade go in a couple of days, they'd learn how to dance. When they go to their proms, they'd be dancers.
Are you a good dancer?
No.
Oh.
No, I was doing the foxtrot.
I remember the nuns used to teach us. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I'll pass that suggestion on, Tom.
Well, you know,
Thank you.
I had mentioned that to a couple, and they said you're crazy.
No,
kids don't want to. I think if you put a bulletin up for the kids, would you be interested in a dance class Saturday, 10 to 2? Then ask for volunteers or the teachers, or put a couple of bucks in the budget for them.
Yeah. Well, actually, some of the gym teachers do give dance lessons to the younger kids.
They do?
In the middle school, right?
Well, maybe.
It's all part. It's part of gym, and in some parts, not every place, but in some of it. I know at the Rumney Marsh because.
But it would be, you know, before.
It's a great idea, right? Because everybody needs it, and it's certainly great exercise. So it's wonderful.
It's great, you know, recreation. When you get older, if you go to a dance or something,
Yeah.
you're not a wallflower.
Yeah.
So,
Tom, you'd never be a wallflower.
Yeah.
So thanks so much. It's
Thank you,
been
Carol.
really great
you.
to share all these memories with you, and I know the folks out there have been delighted to share in that too.
Yeah.
So thank you, folks,
Been a
for
pleasure.
tuning
Thank
in.
you.
Been a
Thank you
pleasure
very
for all
much.
of us. Thank you. See you again.
Okay.